immediacy of God was a common, essential theme in unity, and it made me think of Charles Fillmore back in the early days. Of course, he liked to say things in a way that kind of challenged his listeners back in Kansas City. And one time he said, well, you know, God is your business partner. Ooh, that just sounded so commercial and crass. But he said if you had a concern about your business that you owned, you would discuss it, wouldn't you, with your business partner? And he said, all concerns, everything that bothers you, that disturbs you, everything that interests you, everything that you see as a goal ahead for your life, you would discuss with God, your constant companion, always there, always present. Before I offer my lesson this morning, I wanted to ask something of all of you. We know the challenges right here in our city, 40 blocks north from us. And it is hurtful and painful even for those of us that were not nearby, even for those in other cities in this country. But I wanted to remind you and ask you to do something with me. And that is, we have a congregation, the Evangelical Apostles and Prophets, who make their home now for longer than I've been here, maybe 15 years, here at Unity South. And I know their congregation has many so-called immigrants or people in it that do feel threatened at these times. Their minister has printed cards for them in Spanish and English to be able to present to someone that says, I am standing in my rights. And so there is a concern there. So I want you to ask you to do something very specific, something very unity that is our tradition. And I would like you to think often of that congregation, their pastor, Jose Velasquez, and be very careful with your thoughts, that you do not surround them with a consciousness of worry, but of compassion and care, and that you affirm for them this truth, that God is always and everywhere present. There is strength with them. There is protection with them. That they can be respected, courageous, confident in their right to come together and worship God as they understand God. And as often as you can throughout the week, just to say a short affirmation. God is your constant companion. And see them protected, safe, with the rights of any human being to worship their God when they come into this Unity South building. And that may seem like a simple request or easy to do, but those of you that have really practiced a spiritual path this far in your life know that it takes commitment for peace to begin with you, for confidence and trust to be held consistently in your heart for yourself and others, and to not let the news of the world and of social media steal your attention and direct it toward all that is harmful, all that is violent, all that can happen. That kind of focus takes courage and a commitment. And I'm asking that commitment from you. For these, our friends here in our building, for our congregation, and for anyone that you're thinking about these days in a time of what on earth is going on? What on earth is going on? And remember, there is a greater power that we can trust. Now, don't mishear me. Trusting God doesn't mean I'll just stay in my room and do nothing and let God take care of it. I had a good old friend in Arkansas many years ago, and his sister had a particular way which I didn't understand. They lived in a southern town, and sometimes Steve would mention to his sister, we're kind of having trouble between the races here in our community. And her response was always the same. Oh, I'll pray about it. Prayer is not to be misused as a way to avoid life. It's to be used as an empowerment so that you can contribute to life, truth, possibility, the goodness of God, compassion for others, and not say, gee, I think I'll use my spiritual practice to deaden myself to what's going on out here in the world. Oh, I'll pray about it. No, there's a different way. I will pray about it. As Rich sang beautifully in his song, remembering God is always and everywhere present. I can trust. I can center myself in that truth before I go out in the world and act in ways that are vengeful or harmful or anxiety-producing. I will choose for myself what I carry into my world. Well, my lesson today, power throughout the year. Have you looked at the white stone you were given last Sunday? Have you spoken that suggested affirmation whenever you see that stone of freedom? I am free. I am unlimited. Or however you choose to voice that affirmation. That stone is a symbol of freedom, a reminder for you. It's not a magical device that's going to change your life. It's there to remind you that you can change your life. It's a simple process to remember the consistent inner work of an individual on the path of spiritual development. To focus your ultimate source, God, Spirit, universal mind, whatever name you use, remember the essential nature and quality of God. Always to heal, always to build up life, always to help and guide you on your way. And if you're like me, although I've been in Unity since 75, that's 50 years. I better not say that out loud. But have been a student and then chose the path of ministry in Unity because I valued the message and what it had meant for my life. And if I could in any way awaken, enhance, or just project that possibility into someone's life that may be struggling or doubtful. An instructor I had in Unity School often asked us students when we came together for a class or whatever, and we learned the right response, and he would say, God is good, and you know, some of you know it, all the time. There is a consistency and power in the Creator of all things, of each one of us. And we need to remember it. I mean, I'm preaching to myself. How many times I have found myself in doubt and worry and discouragement, and remembering the presence and power of God and God's infinite love for its creation. It takes work to keep my mind focused that way. Because the outer world often, not always, but often wants to claim my attention for its own purposes. I heard a wonderful lecture last year at the Chautauqua Institution given by that personality on, what do they call it now? MS Now, the old MSNBC, Chris Hayes. And he gave this wonderful lecture to just be aware that we live in a time where your attention, your focus, has become a valuable commodity that many organizations want to claim. They want riches, attention, what? Like that affirmation, all the time. And so it's becoming even more important for Rich to be mindful of his attention. I like to call it our greatest gift, is what we choose to focus on, affirm in our life, act on. And there are many that would like to take it from you for their own purposes. We know that there are many algorithms in social media that are set up to provoke excitement and anxiety and fear. Why? Because they can keep your attention if they get you all bothered. So I don't want to spend all my time on the negative, but just remind us all, again and again, and as I said, preach to myself, that we have to claim our attention and our focus and be responsible for it. If we want to live a life of freedom, we have to, as I remember Kelly often reminding me, freedom comes with responsibility. Responsibility. Freedom doesn't just mean, oh, that's a day that James can just do whatever he wants to do, whatever's fun and amusing. No, to have a free life means to be responsible for your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. Now, I would like to reread just the opening of today's daily word because I found it very helpful and supportive for the intention of my lesson. It opened with these words, "Created in the image and likeness of God, I have creative power to bring my ideas to life. I choose which thoughts to nurture and grow, and where and how to invest my time and energy." What a marvelous statement. What an awakening for Daily Word to continue to remind its readers throughout the world of their creative power, of the choices that God has given them. And this can remind us of what we just celebrated recently, the holy birth of the Christmas mystery. Think of it as a metaphor, if you will. You awakened. That can be seen as a holy birth within you. Awakening to the truth of the divine as your constant companion. So what do you do when this newborn comes into your life? Well, naturally, you choose, how am I going to nurture it? How am I going to care for it so that it can grow, develop? And the scriptures even hinted to Mary of the Annunciation that she would give birth to something that one day when it matured would save her. Do you get that metaphor? This idea of the holy birth. Charles Fillmore said, we celebrate Christmas every time we remember the Christ within us, what God has birthed through us. So we want to nurture it, to care for it, to allow it to develop and become a saving power, a guide, something that we can count on. And so that is our choice. And at this time of the year, we now turn to a new year. And we wonder, what I realized with, as the Magi said, exceedingly great joy. How do I carry this into the new year? On Christmas Eve, we heard that beautiful theme that comes from now the 60th anniversary of A Charlie Brown Christmas. Christmas time is here. And it has a sweet but potent closing line, if we would but remember it and live by it. And it goes, oh, that we could always see such spirit through the year. So how do we carry a power, an inner confidence, a creative impulse into this coming year? Well, maybe it seems mysterious to you. Maybe you ask yourself, I don't know if I've got what it takes to carry this extraordinary mystery of the Holy Child, of the Christ within, and carry it throughout the year. But you do. The very fact that you exist in this world is a testimony of God's love and trust. He brought you into being so that you could bless this world. You could make a difference. Now, this week I happened to be watching television. I'm not saying, as one minister I knew, don't ever turn it on. Never look at TV again. That's not my job to give you commands like that. I just like to remind you, your greatest gift, your attention. Use it wisely. Choose where you focus. A poet popular among the Unity movement and others, Ella Wheeler Wilcox, lived in the 19th century. And she took spiritual principles and spun them into poetic words. This one I particularly like, a part of one of her poems. One ship sails east and another west by the same winds that blow. 'Tis the set of the sails and not the gales that tells the way we go. And setting those sails are the choices we make. Yeah, there's always stuff going on. Jesus said it, in this world you'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I'm another set of sails. Well, I kind of misquoted that, but you have the choice to use the energy, and it may be energy of fear and anxiety, and by the set of your sails, that is the focus of your attention, you can harness that power for your good for the good of the world. Well, I heard several counselors speaking on television this week, and they were being asked the question, how do people work through the grief, the anxiety of this week's events? And in our world, the events seem to keep coming. What do we do? And so I heard two doctors explaining basic steps in processing our feelings, and I got more and more curious. They said, first, you have to be willing to look at your feeling, to look at grief, to look at concern. Okay? Step two, you have to give time consistently to look at these feelings. Not once and done, but to look at them. And the third, you have to shift your focus as much as possible away from the information the world wants to give you. In other words, they advised people if they are struggling in these days with grief and sadness and hopelessness, you have to, at times, turn away from the outer talk so that you can seek Spirit's guidance that comes in the silence. And I sat there for a moment and I thought, well, that's interesting, because that sounds like the same path that we teach in Unity for spiritual development. One, Gerald knows this, nevertheless, I am willing. You have to be willing to walk a spiritual path. Secondly, you have to be consistent. I can't take one workshop in 1994 and be done. I have to consistently work with how I see myself, how I see life, how I see the world. And third, not all the time, but a time of your choosing, you have to shut out the outer world. There was a formula that Rudolf Steiner taught that I particularly liked because it was just so straightforward. He said to his spiritual students, if your life is such that you can only give 5 minutes a day to your spiritual development, if you can remove yourself from the outer world and be truly present to Spirit for 5 minutes, that is enough to transform your life. The whole trick is to be able to give your full attention to the presence of Spirit, of truth, and hold a thought, and hold only that, and not allow your shopping list from Costco to take your attention. I'm almost out of gas. I need to get gas for taking my attention. Know the amazing power that God can heal us if we're willing to give a little time and attention to that presence. So I was grateful for these doctors as they were interviewed that reminded me the same sequence for dealing with our dread, our anxiety, our fear, our grief, is the same sequence we use in our spiritual growth. Am I willing to pay attention? Secondly, am I willing to be consistent on a regular basis, perhaps daily, to consider these truths? And finally, am I willing to let go of the outer world's grasp on my attention? and be true to my spirit. That can help us through anything we encounter in life. It's the same process because it's the same connecting to the truth of our Creator, of realizing the love of God and making our choices. Not anyone else's, my choice, your choice of how to proceed. And because Unity South likes to give you opportunities, Kelly von Heidenkampf is holding a workshop here this coming Saturday. There are flyers in the lobby, and I bring it up not just to promote what Kelly's doing, but because it's an opportunity. She uses the theme, Peace Begins With Me. And it'll be an all-day workshop. Pick up a flyer. But I've heard registration will be closing in a couple of days, so you need to take action now. But it's an opportunity to center yourself in the power God has given you. But if you don't pay attention, if you don't give it time, if you ignore it, nothing's going to change. This is incredible. This is exciting. The power you have, the new life born in you, the Christ impulse already to guide you through any circumstance you can face in this life. Physical healing, prosperity challenges, doubts about what you should be doing, what your purpose is. It's all available if you pay attention. And I'll sum it up with my wonderful teacher, Reverend Tom Thorpe. The Rolifsons know this by heart. But he taught us that simple sequence, pretty easy to remember. As you face life, show up. Show up. Secondly, pay attention. Respond in love. Respond in goodwill. That's a wonderful sequence. You can apply it to everything. And I know Kelly will have a lot of good things to offer, so consider that possibility. So I invite you for a moment to turn within. And I'm just going to ask you, and only you know the answers, within your own heart. Am I willing to look at what's going on in my mind and heart these days? Secondly, am I willing to consistently consider where I am each day in the direction of my thoughts, the radiance of my feelings, the focus of my will? And third, am I willing to make my choices? No one else's, no one at Unity, not Reverend Stacey's suggestions. Am I willing to make my choices in life and follow them through? I'll end with my favorite phrase from the author Maria Nemeth. In this situation, in this day, what am I willing to be so that good can come forth, so that God can act through me? What am I willing to be? Almighty Spirit, ever-present guide, we are grateful and pour forth our thanks that you are always with us if we will choose to pay attention. And so it is.